Hey guys, Ernie here and welcome to the Paleo Hiker MD channel. When I first started looking at some of these vintage stoves, one class or type of stove that really caught my eye were the kerosene stoves, like from the company Primus. There's a lot of different copycats, but Primus is the main one. They run off kerosene, like I said, around the world. That's often known as paraffin, so you might see them as paraffin stoves. When I bid on this stove, I had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't even know how they worked. I just thought it looked pretty cool, so I decided to bid. And I got myself a Primus number 100. Now, what is commonly now known as just a Primus stove was the first pressurized kerosene stove developed in 1892. Now, initially it was made by J.V. Svensson's Kerosene Stove Company, but there was quite a bit of changing hands here at the beginning. It was pretty quickly purchased by B.A. Hjorth & Company, which pretty quickly became Bahco. Eventually, Optimus bought Bahco, and then in 1962, Optimus started making stoves under the company Primus Trading Company, which is where our stove comes from. Primus Trading Company made stoves until 1976. Now, my particular stove, I'm pretty sure, is a 1962. It took a long time to figure out how, where it was made, and I dated it based off of a number code on the burner head itself, and there's no way of knowing that burner head has been on this stove the whole time, but we're going to assume it was, and we're going to call it a 1962. Prior to this, all kerosene stoves had wicks, and those wicks created a lot of soot, so this was billed as a wickless kerosene stove, and therefore much less sooty and much less dirty. Well, let me show you guys what I got and what I've done to it so far. So this is my Primus number 100, made in Sweden. There's different parts. I'll put up a little picture here to show you guys the different parts. But they're pretty simple. You've got the tank, the pump, the rising tube, the spirit cup, the burner, the legs, and the top ring. Looking at the actual stove here, the tank, of course, is down here. The rising tube comes up right up through here. So the way you date these stoves, most stoves are going to be dated by looking at the bottom. And I'm gonna make sure this top's on good so we don't have any spillage. Looking at the bottom and finding a code. I did not have that. My code was, I don't know if you guys can see, there's numbers here. And ultimately, I'll tell you guys the numbers. It's stamped 262562 with the 62 indicating, I believe, 1962. It is made by the Primus Trading Company. There's Primus. And then you can look over here and it says Primus Trading Company, Sweden. Again, I think this is correct. It certainly could be wrong, but I'm doing my best here. I'm not trying to say anything. This is definitely a vintage stove, 1960s, and yeah, I think that's what it is. When I got the stove, it was super dirty. The seller literally stated it had come out of a barn. I cleaned it up. I soaked everything in vinegar for 12 hours. That's what I like to do with these brass stoves. It works very well. Afterwards, I hit it with a brass wire wheel, sanded it down with some steel wool. I didn't want it to be perfect by any means. I just wanted it to look a lot nicer. The filling cap over here, it leaked, and it looks a little junky, but I had to resolder it, and you can see I put some solder down here. I'll be able to get that off at some point with a more aggressive wire wheel, but I haven't even messed with it. There you can see it a little bit better. My awesome solder job, just perfect. This was also leaking, so I sourced a new gasket for inside here, and it works very well. The legs were super rusty, and I decided to repaint them, or paint them with some high heat silver paint. Some might not like that, but I think it looks pretty good. And like I showed you guys, the top plate was missing, so I went ahead and bought a new top plate. It's hard to find them secondhand, so I just bought kind of a reproduction. I also bought a reproduction silencer that works fairly well, but we're gonna let it run full song today because, you know, let's hear this jet engine roar. I did get the spare parts from a supplier in the UK off eBay. I'll leave a link down below if any of you guys are interested in. But this is what I'm left with after restoration, and I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest with you. I think it looks pretty cool. It's just a different type of stove. I'll show you guys here in a second how it works. It is a completely different system from the standpoint of the check valve. It uses a check valve just like the Coleman stoves do, but it's a different check valve, a different tool to get it out, and the way you light these are completely different than your Coleman stoves. So speaking of lighting it, we're going to get this thing going, and then we're going to show you guys what the flame pattern looks like. After that, we're going to do a 2-cup bowl test just to see how it does. Why not? You know, we run bowl tests with all of our new stoves. Let's do it with the vintage one as well. Okay, so we're going to get this thing going. Now, it runs off kerosene, super important. I think I've got enough in there, but I'm going to add some kerosene to it. Let's just do that real quick. I keep a lot of my fuels in just, you know, containers like this. Allows me to easily add fuel. There we go. Now, you need to preheat this stove. Even though you can pressurize it, and you do have a pump, this is the way to do it. Get yourself some denatured alcohol. You can pump this and make some of the kerosene flow out into the tray here, but it's a little bit messier. So I'm just gonna get, and in my experience, the key to getting these going is really preheating them well. So don't be shy on the alcohol. What you want to do first, you have this knob right here, okay? This knob, when it's closed, is creating pressure inside of the tank. When it's open, it will not allow pressure to obviously build, and it will not let the stove actually run. So what I do when I start this thing, I leave this open, okay? We'll start it. And really, I'm just telling y'all, be patient, all right? I'm gonna go ahead and set this up over here because we're gonna do a bowl test. We're gonna leave that here. Be patient. You're gonna start to hear it make some noise. Eventually, what you're gonna wanna do is close the little valve and start to build pressure inside. But you wanna do that in just a little bit. You wanna let it go, okay? I'd say maybe a minute. It's been going about a minute. I'm gonna close this. Now we're gonna start building pressure inside. And you wanna let it go for just a little while. I'm gonna go ahead and put our tray on top because we are gonna do the bowl test, and put it right there. So we're building pressure at this point, and I'm going to move this because I'm gonna need to be able to pump this thing over here. Now, once there's pressure built, and you start to pump, it's gonna go, okay? What I like to do is just let it build a good amount of pressure before I even try to start. If you don't let it heat up real well, you're gonna get yourself a good old-fashioned fireball, all right? Because what's gonna happen is kerosene, liquid kerosene, is just gonna flow through this thing, and it's gonna be a pretty good show, all right? If you let it preheat well, what you're doing is you're gonna allow the burner head to get hot enough to vaporize that kerosene. We are going to put this, there we go. That's like a little flame, spreader, and it works very well. So we're getting close to the end of our alcohol. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to pump, and I'm going to stop talking because y'all aren't going to be able to hear me anymore. There it is, going like crazy. We're gonna pop our thing on, turn this on. If it's got a good seal, you should not have to repressurize it very much. It's still a little bit orange and flame because we still have the preheat tray going, but it is going really well. Pretty much lost our preheat tray. I'm just gonna do about 5 pumps. And I don't hear any significant change. Maybe got a little bit louder, but nothing major. So I think we are at full song. Let's see how long it takes to get these to a boil. and then we'll turn it off. All right. It's boiling. Now to turn it off, pretty simple. Just open the pressure. It just goes right out. Easy as pie. I mean, that is so cool that you just open the pressure and it goes away. So just under 4 minutes for 2 cups. Pretty solid time in my opinion. I think that's a good time. It's similar to what I've gotten in the past with this stove. So that's not only a look at this stove, but a little bit of information on this type of stove in general. I think it's cool to look at these stoves and the history behind them. That's kind of what makes vintage stoves so cool. I'm definitely in the market for more. There are tons of models of these types of stoves. I watch eBay all the time, and I'm pretty careful about what I spend. I don't need any of these stoves, so there's no reason to overspend. I just watch closely, and when I have a chance to pick one up at the right price for me, I get everything I can. Are there any particular models you guys are interested in? Make sure and leave it down in the comments if there are, and I'll try to pick one up. Again, I'm not gonna just go on eBay and buy one just for fun, because you can really spend a lot of money on these stoves. I'm looking for ones that are, you know, all there and I can easily put them back together and get them working. Don't worry at all, because there are many vintage stoves on the channel as of right now, as well as many more to come. If you're interested more in how these stoves work, how they come apart, how to disassemble them, how to clean them up, how to reassemble them, check out my second channel, Paleo Maker MD. That's where all those videos are. And if you're like me and you really love stoves, you're really gonna wanna watch some of these awesome videos where we really take things apart, learn how things work, how the different stove systems work, whether it be, you know, white gas pressurized stoves or these paraffin stoves. You got all kinds of different options. Some white gas stoves have wicks, which of course this one doesn't, like the Svea, for example, or some of the Optimus models will have wicks. But anyway, when you take them apart, you figure out how it works. I initially thought this stove would have a wick, so I took it apart and saw no wick, and I thought, oh man, I'm gonna have to source a wick. I don't know what. That's how little I knew. I figured out pretty quickly just with a little Google searching that mine was just fine. But if you're looking for information about the inside of these stoves, check out Paleo Maker MD. Like I said earlier, if there's any stoves you'd like to see me pick up, I've picked up a bunch already. But if you have some that you're interested in, or one in particular you're interested in, leave it down below in the comment section and I'll take a look and see if I can't pick one of those up eventually. I'm looking at really expanding my vintage stove collection and enjoying this hobby as much as possible. Do me a big favor, guys. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up down below. Really helps spread things across YouTube. If you are not subscribed, hit the subscription button if you want to make sure you don't miss any videos. Hit that notification bell and you will be the first to know. Having a great time with these vintage stoves. I'll make sure and leave. I'm going to have a vintage stove playlist down below, so if you want to see what other vintage stoves I've already checked out and showed you guys, just check for the playlist. As always, guys, I appreciate you checking out the Paleo Hiker MD channel. Stay tuned for more videos soon.